Hey, what's up, board game friends? Welcome back to Game Brigade. My name is Brian, and today we are going to be covering the 10 best games by mechanic that I think you should own. These games were specifically picked out for either the mechanics that they have in this selection, the enjoyment of the game, or the accessibility of those games. And I really wanted to dive in and think what would make the best game per mechanic for a collection. So that is what we are going to be taking a look at today. Now, I'm going to give you a bunch of bonus information regarding other potential selections that I really heavily considered and why or why not I might have not selected something versus what I went with. So if there anything I might have missed, please leave them in the comment section because I would really like to hear what you guys' thoughts are. If this sounds like a fun video, remember to hit that subscribe button, join the Game Brigade community, and leave a thumbs up. So for the first game, I went with worker placement. Worker placement is an interesting mechanic because there are many games that use worker placement and other mechanics in their system. So I had to think of games that really focused on the worker placement as one of the key mechanisms of that game and not just a point of that game. So for example, some of the games I considered for worker placement was Everdell. Everdell is a great worker placement game, but it's also a tableau building game using different animal creatures. Because of the way the worker placement works in that, I didn't go with it. On Mars was another one, but it's very heavy. Not as easy to table for many different groups, but I definitely love that one. Endless Winter was another one that I went with, but it's also a deck builder, and it's also got area control. It's kind of a hobgoblin of different mechanics. And Lost Ruins of Arnak was another one I took a look at. But what I ended up deciding on, what was the best system that I felt like used the workers as the key focus of the game, and that one was Viticulture. Now, this is the Essential Edition, and I only really play Viticulture now with the Tuscany expansion, but I do think the Viticulture base game is good for people who are looking for that easygoing experience. Viticulture is a game where you are going to be creating a vineyard from an inheritance that's been passed down to you from your parents, and you are going to use that vineyard to create different types of wines: white wine, red wine, sparkling wine, and rosé. But to do that, you need to send your workers to gather resources for your place by doing tours or collecting help for your location by playing different types of cards. But the key mechanic is you're going to be sending your worker to different locations. The interesting part about the game, and the reason I like Tuscany, is there are 4 seasons. Obviously in a season there's 4 seasons, but there are 4 seasons that you can send your workers in. Once you're done in that, and each season has specific actions that you can send your worker to. So you might want to wait because your plan might be to do things later. So you might not send workers in the first 2 seasons and then start sending workers in the fall where you harvest and maybe make your wine, and then you can sell your wine or hire additional workers. I really like that mechanic of knowing when to send your workers and what seasons. It's really great. This is available relatively easy to find in almost all LGSs, which is another reason why I picked Viticulture. That is my worker placement game. Okay, Deck Builder is number 2. Deck Builder was very hard for me to select. I looked at games like Clank. I looked at games like Moonrakers. Deck building is one of my favorite mechanics. And unfortunately, a lot of the games that I enjoy also intertwine other mechanics in it, kind of like I was mentioning with worker placement. The one I decided to go with, and it's because maybe it's one of my favorite games of all time, is Dune Imperium. Dune Imperium is a worker placement game as well, but it features deck building as one of the key mechanics in the game because you must use your deck to use your workers to send them locations. In this game, you're going to have a hand of cards that have different types of locations that you can play to then send your workers to those specific locations. Alternatively, you're able to hold your cards for their secondary value, which you can then use them to buy additional cards to add them to your deck. I love this push and play aspect of the game. Dune is also a very competitive game, which is one of the main reasons I wanted to place it in this location, because it is so good to play with your friends, especially if you like a competitive experience, that I just don't really get in many games these days when I want to get that real competitive itch going. So Dune Imperium is the one for me. But again, like I said, there's plenty of other games. Even Lost Ruins of Arnak, which is another worker placement game, could fit here. Moonrakers, if you're looking for more of a socially light experience, but still a very good deck building game. And then Clank is just a very, very good deck building game in general. But again, you are then also going down and delving into a dungeon as you try to score loot and then get out before the dragon kills you. So there's plenty of options. For me, Dune Imperium, though, tops the list. Next, area control. Area control is hard because a lot of times my brain defaults to area control being dudes on a map, conflict. There's obviously other aspects of area control in there. Like I mentioned, Endless Winter has area control mechanics in it. But like I said, my brain almost always defaults to dudes on a map. And I had a hard time selecting between the top two. There are two that that could be 50-50 either way. Depends on availability and your player group. But the one that I went with is Kemet. Kemet is an Egyptian-themed game, as you can tell probably from the cover of the box here, where you are going to be taking control of a symmetrical faction. All the factions start the same. But what I love about Kemet is the powers and abilities that you will be buying and upgrading to make your faction become asymmetrical. What I mean by that, there are different tiles in terms of power tiles that you're going to be buying through the game. And you also select these tiles at the start of the game to see which ones you want to play with. You have some that are defensive based, you have some that are economy based, you have some that are combat based, you have some that are hybrids, and you have some that are sacrificing your own units for power based. So you will choose which one best fits your game style for that evening, and then players are going to be buying these tiles to asymmetrically give them power. Now, most of the tiles are unique, which means there's only one tile of that type. There are a few that are duplicates, so players could have some similarities, but I do love the push in terms of the players' abilities in Kemet. The combat system is also very fun because it really does encourage you to have combat. Many times player groups really shy away from conflict. They don't want to have combat because it's unfun to lose your units or feel like you're picked on. But Kemet really forces players to have to become comfortable with conflict and understand that it's just part of the game, as you have to go to these locations, you have to do the things in the game, which is naturally going to cause conflict to occur. And then in the game, the combat is decided by either your army size, how many units you send into a conflict, as well as the cards you're going to place. The great thing about the cards is everyone has the same cards unless you change them through your powers and ability tiles. And then you are going to burn one and then play one at the same time in conflict, which means you're going to have to select a card that you're not going to use. You don't have access to it until you refresh your hand. And then one you're going to play, which is either going to give you power buff to win the conflict, damage buff to damage their units to actually kill them, because you don't kill them just by winning, and defensive to stop their damage from coming through. I love Kemet. It's a great game. The alternative 50-50 split for this one was Blood Rage. Blood Rage is a great game. I love Blood Rage. I love the drafting aspect. But if I had drafting, which I just noticed I don't have drafting on this board, which is a shame because I should have put it on here. I feel like Blood Rage to me more fits into a drafting aspect, because that's where the real meat and the potatoes of Blood Rage shines for me. And that's why I placed Kemet here in the area control section. Okay, so what is next? What would be the good one? Oh, all right. So let's move these boxes around. Let's kind of put it down like this. Do something like that. Make it so I can actually have some room here to show you some more games. Okay, so the next one I have here is Civilization Builder, or a civilization game. Civ games are hard. Let's do my little preamble. Civ games are hard because Civ games I have been chasing down for so many years, and I feel like I'm still looking for the perfect civilization game that really is going to fit in my collection. But for now, I'm going to select Mosaic as the title that I would recommend to people. Now, this is the Colossal Edition. I don't think you need the Colossal Edition. In fact, there's a retail version of this game for a fraction of the price of what I paid here, which is going to deliver you the same experience that I have here, minus some stupid minis that you really don't need that kind of clog the board. Mosaic is a civilization-like game where you are going to be picking a role that's going to have a specific type of ability that you are going to be focusing on, like the farmer or the philosopher or the general or the builder, etc. You like to do different and then you're going to focus on that mechanic. But what's great about this game is you're going to be building different types of structures, which is going to be placing them on the board, which are going to give you different types of powers and abilities from the section, also getting you area control aspects. And then you're going to be purchasing technologies, which kind of comes into a Tableau building. So there's a lot of mechanics going on in Mosaic, but because of its theme, the way it implements itself into the civilization genre, I felt like it was a good fit here. Like I said, though, I'm still always looking for that civilization builder that truly makes me feel like I'm taking a civilization and building it from the bottom up. So Mosaic is the one I recommend for now, but it's also caveated. Okay, Boss Battler. Boss Battler. Let's put these like this, and let's find the Boss Battler. Okay. Oathsworn. Oathsworn might be difficult to find. And this one was hard for me because I think all the boss battlers that I really, truly love are crowdfunded. I have on here, I have Townsfolk Tussles, Kingdom Death Monster, Monster Hunter World, Primal, which hasn't delivered yet, but it's going to be great, and Aeon's Trespass Odyssey. All of these games are boss battlers in their own way, in the formula that they present it into how you're going to fight these different types of monsters. Oathsworn to me is one of the most thematic games, has an incredible story, and the way the combat is played with your hand management and your battle flow, allowing you to play a card and you have to wait for it to cycle back around, is an incredible system. I also really, really enjoy the way each monster in this game is presented, and the way that you're handling it is very thematic, and the way the monster would fight or respond or react is very, very good. So I do admit Oathsworn might be more difficult to find, but in terms of a true, pure boss battler that is honest to itself, Oathsworn takes the cake for me. Next, Dungeon Crawler. Dungeon Crawler. Dungeon Crawler was a hard one because there's a lot of great dungeon crawlers out there that provide different types of experiences, giving you the flow. I looked at Imperial Assault. I looked at Descent. Many of these games give you the feeling of moving through a dungeon with your hero, dealing damage to minions until you find the big boss, and then you have an epic battle, hopefully at the end. So what is a game that's going to differentiate itself from that, also giving you some other things to have fun with and play around with, or give you some customization? Because to me, that's where the real fun of these dungeon crawlers come from, is when you start giving me the ability to customize my hero to truly make them their own. And that is why I decided that Chronicles of Drunagor was going to be the selection for me. Chronicles of Drunagor is a dungeon crawler game, also crowdfunded, where you are going to be picking a hero, but with that selection, you are also going to be selecting your role within the group, and also any hybrid classes that you may have. By selecting your role, you're going to dictate where you're going to play in the timeline order of conflict. So every initiative order will be decided by the order of your roles. But then you also have the ability to hybrid and basically cross-select different types of heroes. So you could be, say, a paladin hunter, or a druid sorcerer. whatever you want to do, the options and customizations is really, really good. It also uses a cube mechanic where you are going to be selecting your abilities and your actions in each scenario. And then as you use your abilities and you're going through the dungeon and you have to recall your cubes back so you can have access to them again to activate them, you're going to start getting damage and fatigue, limiting the amount of resources that you can play with. So it takes some time to figure out when's the best time to recall, or when do you want to repair or heal your cube fatigue. It's a very, very interesting mechanic. Chronicles of Junagor probably is one of my more favorite dungeon crawling experiences for those reasons. Okay, so social deduction. Social deduction is an interesting one because there's a lot of different types of social deduction. But when I think about social deduction, I think about games where players, it's going to be more of a party-like game. Players are going to be either having a hidden traitor mechanic or something in that line. And to me, when I think of the most pure, fun one out there, it has to be Blood on the Clock Tower. Blood on the Clock Tower is a recent find for me. I recently played this at Dice Tower West, but I've played this now. This is probably my most played game in 2023 to date so far. I play Blood on the Clock Tower as often as I can, either hosting parties or finding events to go to in my local city. Blood on the Clock Tower is a game where there are going to be two sides. You have the good side, the townsfolk, versus the evil side with the demon. Depending on the player count, there are going to be potential minions on the demon side to assist them in the victory. But effectively in this game, the townsfolk are going to try to deduce or use their social deduction skills to find out who the demon player is and execute them during the day voting phase. But there are a lot of misdirections happening in this game, as everyone in the game has an ability and a power that they are asymmetrically using. Everyone has their own ability. But there are effects in the game that can give you misinformation, give you wrong information, which is going to question who you know and who you trust. The demon is also going to be given 3 roles that are not in the current game, so they can bluff as those and basically tell people that they are something when they are not. I love this experience. It's an incredible one. And the best thing about it is that when you are eliminated, unlike other games like Mafia or Werewolf, if you are eliminated, you're just out of the game and you just watch how it goes. This one, you are still part of it. You are still voting. You are still actively participating in the victory for your team, because as a ghost, an eliminated player, you still have 1 remaining vote for the rest of the game. So your vote could decide who wins or loses when it comes down to the final votes. I love Blood on the Clock Tower. It's a truly great experience. Unfortunately, a lot of people consider it a convention-only game because it's hard to get 7 to 10 players in a room to enjoy it. But I have done it. I have made it work in my hometown. I think you could too. It just takes a little bit of effort. So, with that, we have adventure game and 4X games. I forgot to grab the adventure game box, so we'll talk about it. But let's talk about 4X. 4X is basically a war game utilizing exploration, exploitation, extermination, and expansion. Those are the 4 X's in the game, where players are going to be given a race, and usually you're going to be moving around the board looking to win in whatever methods there are. I picked Twilight Imperium, but this one was hard because another one I was going to select would be, say, Eclipse. I didn't select Eclipse because, if I were to be honest with myself, the truest, most enjoyable experience I ever have in this format is with Twilight Imperium. Now, there is a caveat here because Twilight Imperium is a game that can take upwards to 8 to 10 hours to play. I don't think it has to, but it just seems like it always happens to do that. People take longer on their turns, or they forget it's their turn, whatever it may be. Those things do happen to happen. Twilight Imperium, though, is a game where you are going to be taking on an asymmetrical faction. It's a space war game, and you are going to be moving through the galaxy, conquering different types of planets, exploiting their resources to build more ships, eventually having conflict with your opponents as you race to the center where Mechatol Rex is located. Then there's also a secondary mechanic where there's going to be a political voting mechanic where players are going to vote on policies and rule changes that are going to affect the entire game, either instantly with an immediate effect or a long-term lasting effect that could last several turns until a new law is voted into place to replace it. I love the political structure of this. It's an experience that is very hard to replicate in many different games, one that I don't think I can find in many different situations, and that's why it's probably my favorite experience overall, but it's hard to table. Now, alternatively, like I mentioned, Eclipse is another experience that's going to give you a lot of the same feelings here, but minus the political section, adding in technology buffing where you're going to be creating and designing your own ships, by purchasing different types of technology or finding them by killing neutral bosses. It's a great experience half the time, but doesn't give you that social dynamic experience that Twilight Imperium does. Okay, we're coming up to the end here. Everdell, this giant stupid box that I love but I also hate, is my Tableau building selection. I mentioned Everdell earlier. It's also dusty as heck. I mentioned Everdell earlier when I talked about worker placement. I do think Everdell is a solid worker placement game. But what really makes Everdell special to me is when you're taking your cards and adding them to your Tableau, which is going to give you your system and your abilities and all the cool things that you're making your system work, your whole engine work, is through the Tableau as you build your 15 cards out to make your city. Everdell is also really enjoyable because the base game itself is very good, but then you have modular expansions that you can add to the experience to be able to change up the gameplay, change up the type of cards you might experience, really giving you alternative ways to enjoy the game. I love that about Everdell, and one of the reasons why I push this one when we're talking about experiences that can be modular. Everdell is one also a very charming, cute game with incredible art. People always mention Redwall. It's very reason why it's with that cute little creatures living their life. So Everdell is going to be my Tableau builder. Ones that I had on this one that were honorable mentions would be like Dwellings of Eldervale, another similar game where you're going to be sending your workers out and then going on quests to build tableaus. But I didn't feel like the Tableau worked as well on that one comparatively to Everdell. And another one would be Terraforming Mars. I decided not to go with Terraforming Mars for this specific list, just because one, it's on every other list I've ever seen, and I wanted to give it a break from seeing it all the time. But two, it also has a very long runtime, which can mean the games might take 3 to 4 hours comparatively to 90 minutes for Everdell. So I decided if I were to play either one, I probably would choose Everdell in most instances because it's easier to table, still has an enjoyable experience, and it's half the time. The final game that I didn't bring down because it's behind me and I forgot about it is the adventure selection. Adventuring games are going to be games that are not necessarily campaign based. So they can still be single shot scenarios, but they are going to be allowing you to take your character through a progression. So I like to see games that give me the ability to level up. So games like Massive Darkness 2 would be a good option, where you're going to select your character, you're going to be able to level up as you go up through that single scenario. But the one for me, which is still the most enjoyable and the most replayable, is Too Many Bones. Too Many Bones is an incredible experience where you're going to be selecting a gear lock, doing your initial level up, and then as you go through each battle scenario and gaining your XP, you're going to be modifying your character, adding new dice unlocks, because it's a dice building game, I guess you would say, and then going through each adventure until you get to the final boss of your adventure and defeating him in roughly about 2 to 3 hour gameplay sessions. I love the fact that you can have an entire campaign-like experience in a single night as you pick your character, go through the whole leveling up, do different types of scenarios, different types of battles, all what would feel like a campaign, but wrapping up neatly as soon as you beat the boss, ending the experience. So for me, that's what makes Too Many Bones the best adventuring game. The final mechanic I want to talk about is pick up and deliver. A mechanic that I don't get to see as often on the board because it's not as popular, but there is one that stands out to me every time I play it, and that one is Star Wars Outer Rim. Star Wars Outer Rim by Fantasy Flight Games is a true pick up and deliver game where you are going to be going around the outer rim of the galaxy, doing different odd jobs, bounty hunting, smuggling, delivery of cargo, while you try to become the most infamous outlaw there is. What I like about this game is a lot of pick up and deliver games sometimes feel like it's just solitaires or moving around the board, but Outer Rim has the option of actually fighting your opponents, being interactive with them, causing them to get disrupted. I like that experience completely. Plus, it's Star Wars, and it's done very well by Fantasy Flight. They also just recently did an expansion, which I really enjoyed, expanded a lot of the options, giving us more cards, giving us more of everything that makes the game better. So I highly recommend getting the expansion if you do plan on picking up Outer Rim, because it just enhances the game rather than overcomplicating the game. And that is it. That is all the games. I might have had more than 10 because I might have added one on by accident last minute. But let me know what you guys think of the video. I got a lot of dust flying around here because I haven't played some of these games in a while. So let me know what you guys think of this list. My name is Brian from Game Brigade. I will talk to you very soon.